When we came to Houston, we came looking for a story about AIDS. We found a city like many others, a healthcare system overwhelmed, bewildered doctors and frightened patients. When we came to Houston, we didn't know Fabian Bridges. He was just one of the faceless victims.
I met Fabian about 1975. After I got out of school and moved here to Houston in about 1979, we would keep in contact by phone and letters.
Fabian's friend Shirley.
Fabian decided that he would like to start a new career and move here and see if Houston would be profitable for him.
Fabian had several jobs after he arrived in Houston, and in 1982, he signed on with a Harris County flood control crew like this one. At night, he liked to go dancing and listen to music. He spent time in the nightclubs and gay bars in Houston's Montrose district. Fabian was 29 years old. He was making close to $19,000 a year, and life seemed promising.
You still waiting for your ampicillin?
Yeah.
Okay, well, they'll get it pretty soon.
Dr. Robert Aw is chief of pulmonary medicine at Jefferson Davis Public Hospital in Houston. He consults on most AIDS cases there.
I first met Fabian Bridges in early April of '85 after I'd gotten a call from a doctor in a satellite clinic that she thought she had an AIDS patient and wanted to admit him to our hospital for evaluation. He came over here and had many AIDS-related infections, did indeed have AIDS, and was diagnosed here 3 or 4 days after his arrival as having AIDS. He was very, very sick. He had very high fevers. He had persistent diarrhea.
When I went to Texas, they told me exactly what condition my son was in and how long, they expect for him to live and everything. And for me to try to make arrangements for his funeral, because he wasn't going to live long.
But Fabian wasn't ready to die. Like many AIDS patients, his condition improved. In July, after 3 months at Jefferson Davis, Fabian was no longer sick enough to stay. He'd lost his job, had no money, and there was nowhere for him to live outside the hospital.
Well, Fabian was ready to go home, and we met several times in discharge planning conferences to decide what would be the best, and Fabian's desire was to go back to his family in the north. And so we paid for a one-way plane ticket for him to go back there.
The doctors had done what they could. The hospital gave Fabian $100 and sent him to his sisters in Indianapolis.
We just didn't know enough about the disease, and we knew that when you had it, you would die, and that certain aspects of it, it was contagious.
Oh, excuse me.
Fabian's 2 sisters learned what they could about the disease, but with all the uncertainty surrounding AIDS, the family was afraid.
We weren't sure of how you can contact it. We heard only sexual contact, but now we're hearing other things like saliva or whatever, and we just didn't know and didn't want to take a chance.
I just couldn't have Calvin in the household with this little brat here running around. He's a terror around the house. He's in everything. Personal belongings. He even plays in the toilet, And with Calvin using the personal things around the house, he would pick them up. He wouldn't know any difference. He doesn't know what AIDS is. He doesn't know what homosexuality is. He's innocent. And I did not want to expose him to that, and I wouldn't. And I remember him calling one night asking, could he come over and stay, and he was crying, and I remember him saying to her, can I come over, do you have a sleeping bag? Can I sleep in your backyard? I think he had a basic need of wanting and needing to be around his family, and I think everybody realized that, and felt that. And I think that hurt. It hurt me. It hurt me to say no.
With no money, Fabian drifted around Indianapolis, sometimes staying in shelters for the indigent. One day, he began showing signs of a gonorrhea infection and went in for treatment. That day, about a month after he left Houston, Fabian got in trouble with the law.
Fabian Bridges was arrested for allegedly stealing a bicycle, and he's brought into the lockup here, and he's fingerprinted here and photographed right here in this chair. Then he was brought over and placed in the isolation cell right here to keep him away from the other prisoners so he wouldn't contaminate them or anybody else.
When he was arrested, Fabian told police he had AIDS. Deputy Terry Dale is a medical officer at the Marion County Jail.
I guess my biggest concern was for myself and the other prisoners and the other deputies that he possibly would come in contact with and spread the disease.
When Municipal Judge John Downer heard that an AIDS victim was being held, he left his courtroom to meet with the city prosecutor and the deputy.
I think the judge expressed a little concern that possibly other people in the courtroom might become frightened if they found out he had AIDS and cause a panic maybe, or, you know, possibly even contaminate other people in the courtroom.
The prosecutor readily admitted, yes, we did drop the charges, and he gave his reasons why. Advantages, disadvantages. He said it was a minor, charge, a misdemeanor theft of a bicycle. We might have reconsidered if it were a felony or a serious violent crime, which it wasn't.
Kyle Niederprem is a police reporter for the Indianapolis Star. She covered Fabian's story.
They were even throwing away some of the pens and pencils that Fabian had used to sign some of his documents. So apparently in very short order, and I'm not sure of the time frame, he went to the jail, a decision was made quickly, a little meeting was had, and it was decided for best for all to release him and get him out of town.
The charges against Fabian Bridges were dropped, and then Judge Downer chipped in $20, and the county fund chipped in the rest of the money, and we provided a ticket to Cleveland, Ohio for Fabian Bridges to get home to his folks, because this is where he had informed me where his mother and father lived. So we made sure that he got the bus ticket, and then I transported him to the bus station and made sure he got on the bus okay.
Here's a man who's dying. He's just dying, of AIDS or whatever. We have a dying man. He's homeless. He's got nothing, and nobody wants him. And, he probably would have died in obscurity if no one had stumbled upon his story, if no one had called, us to pursue it.
It was Kyle Niederprem's story that first led us to Fabian. It was a story about the alienation and rejection that many AIDS victims suffer. So in late August, we came to Cleveland to find Fabian. We started by checking the shelters. Then we heard he might be staying in this hotel.
What was it like when you first found out you had AIDS?
Well, I was sitting in the office at this private hospital, York's Plaza, and I don't know, my world just started crumbling. I just sat there a minute, and it seemed like I could see everything flash right before me, and I just sat on the thing, the bed, and started crying, I said to myself, my life is over. This is where it stopped. She said,
Fabian told us he was still angry about what happened in the Indianapolis jail.
I felt I was being treated like an animal. They didn't care. The only thing they cared about was not getting disease. And after I got there, they put me in this waiting cell. And I was there for about 2 hours. And all of a sudden, the sheriffs, the policemen, peons, maintenance people, they all just came by and got a glance and started whispering and went out the other way. I was so humiliated, I just could have grabbed them by their neck and just choked the hell out of them, choked the life right out of them. Or if I had the power to transmit the disease by throwing my hand at something, I would have. And then just sat back and laugh at them, see how they react. but I was just fantasizing. They treated me real dehumanized. It was beyond slavery. When the damn thing I could do, after all that, I turned around in the cell and just hit my head against the corner and just started crying.
We spent several days with Fabian, and he agreed to let us tell his story. Fabian told us that when he first arrived in Cleveland, he called his mother from the bus station. He called her again while we were with him.
Oh, can you possibly come pick me up? Why not? George.
Fabian's stepfather would not let him stay at his mother's house.
Can I come over? Well, where am I gonna stay? You want me to stay in the street? I'll call you later.
Fabian went to the Red Cross for help. They couldn't find a shelter that would take a person with AIDS, so they paid for the hotel room where we found him. Fabian had applied for Social Security disability while he was still in the hospital in Houston. And now, 2 months later, he was still waiting for his first check.
I miss you.
He said he had no money, so sometimes we bought him meals, and we had his laundry done. One day, Fabian saw a small portable radio he liked. We bought it for him. Fabian hung out on the streets and said he made friends there. He spent time in adult bookstores and movie houses, and he admitted it was a way he helped support himself.
I was in this hot peep show down here on 4th Street. They just come and go. You pick, you know. Sometimes I do it for money, especially when I ain't got any. I did it for money yesterday. Made $5.
After Fabian said this, we questioned him more closely about his sex life. Fabian told us that sometimes he had sex for money, other times for affection. He told us a disturbing story of what had happened a few nights before.
So we got to here. I told him to be very quiet. We were walking in. You know, I told the people at the desk that I don't bring rowdy people in, which I don't. So we got in, came upstairs. I had a couple of pops, great pops up here. I asked him did he want something to drink. I also had some gin that I downed real quick. And I had a half a square, smoked that. And we started intimately having sex. I worked on him first because he had on these sexy parachute pants, black. And then we cut the lights down low and cut the music down low. And I told him he can get comfortable. You know, what I liked about him was he's very affectionate. That's what I like, hugging, snuggling up.
Did you kiss?
No kissing. Wanted to.
What happened?
After that, we just laid here. It wasn't no quick bam, thank you, ma'am. It was, I like to take my time and let the moment stretch out. And I tried to convince him to spend the night, but he had to go to work. He had to be up at 6. By that time, I was about 3 or 4. So he got up and we cleaned up. After I came, or did I come, came inside him, accident. Because the minute I was pulling it out, it was coming out. And I cleaned him up, cleaned each other up. He got dressed and we exchanged phone numbers. He called me the other night.
Does he know you have AIDS? Do you worry about him?
He seems pretty healthy.
Fabian's story had suddenly changed. He was no longer just a victim. After Fabian told us he was having unsafe sex, we faced a dilemma. Should we report him to authorities or keep his story confidential, knowing that he could be infecting others? We decided to tell health officials what we knew. To our surprise, they told us the Cleveland police had already informed them Fabian was suspected of soliciting. But the health department said it considered that information only a rumor and had not investigated.
Did the information I get is this fellow's out on the streets and engaging in sex acts and everything?
Someone who did act on our information was George Forbes, president of the Cleveland City Council.
You're soliciting on Prospect? Okay, okay. Yeah, but that was, you know, they arrested him when? Friday of last week. Okay.
Forbes called the Cleveland City Health Director to find out what was going on.
Okay. Thank you. Goodbye. What did he say? He was arrested Friday for soliciting. He was back out on the street Monday. All right. He said, you're right. We got a right to protect people. What are you going to do? I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It came yesterday and she now withholding it. She done stuck it in a bank without my consent, and I'm gonna call the cops on her.
By this time, Fabian's disability check had finally come to his mother's house. It covered several months and amounted to about $1,800.
I taken it and tried to make arrangements for my son's funeral. I did what they told me to do in Texas, you know. I thought I was doing what was right. Because I asked my daughter what she thought about it. She said, oh, Mama, I think that's wonderful, you know. Because the doctor said he wasn't going to live long, you know what I mean? And she said, because if anything should happen, said, we wouldn't have any money to bury him. So, Mama, I think it's so beautiful. And then I called my mother and asked her, and she said the same thing. She said, yeah, I was worried about it. She said, baby, go ahead and do it. And that's what I did.
Fabian's mother had invested the Social Security money in a funeral for him. When Fabian found out, he demanded she get it back.
All these $100 bills.
Mm-hmm. He said, you know you're going to die.
There is no check.
And he said he didn't care how they put him away, but, you know, he figured that the city could bury him. All he wanted was his money.
That'll hold you.
Well, thank you. Was I sure?
You're most welcome.
Thank you.
I don't need to count it. I just need to cling on to it.
I'm your mother. You understand what I'm talking about? If you don't
Yeah.
trust your mother, who can you trust?
That's true.
But you don't even trust me.
I'm not so sure about this world, you know.
Well, you
Too
better
much.
be sure, because you're going to need somebody by your side. Without mother, you lost.
Yeah.
Without a mother,
Without
you lost.
family.
Here's a case where a fella knows that he has it, and he says, to hell with it. I'm going. How many am I going to take with me?
Council President Forbes called officials of health, legal, and social services together to decide what to do about Fabian.
What the hell do you do? I mean, the guy admits, at least George and I think, that from his statements, he has admitted that he has had anal intercourse and that he has AIDS and that he didn't care. And he is on the streets.
We've had the right to quarantine against smallpox and things of this nature that were deadly diseases, and we put quarantine signs on houses saying that this house is quarantined. Now, if we could do it for diseases that was not as deadly as this, I'm damn sure we can do it in this particular case. Now, I don't think we are as helpless as you think we are.
There are laws, yes.
I think the Ohio regs address certain diseases as being quarantinable, but AIDS is not one of them.
Correct. With this one, you can't detain them for an indefinite period of time, feasibly anyway. I think what you can do is evaluate them as to whether they're mentally competent and perhaps find some other routes. I mean, there really is no precedent. Diana talked with other cities and states to find out how they're dealing with the problem, and we're right now at the forefront of deciding how to make public health policy. There is nothing.
I think it would be good if we had a state policy that we could all buy into and establish, so that the chief of police in Cleveland or Cleveland Heights and the county commissioner in Cuyahoga County or in Lorain County or in Trumbull County know exactly where the hell we're going on this.
And of course, we at the state say it'd be wonderful if they had a national policy to give us some direction. And
yeah.
So.
But I mean, you know what? They don't give a damn nationally. The bottom line is we've got a guy in the street here. I mean, that's the bottom line. George is right. The guy's got a gun. He's out shooting people. You don't die in 15 seconds. You die in 2 years by the statistics. I mean,
it's slow and painful.
And it's a slow, anguishing, painful death. And what did we say collectively as a group of people representing the society?
The point they're trying to deal with is a touchy legal question. Does the city have the authority to arrest this person? The police say no, because he isn't breaking the law. But do they have a moral obligation to protect the unsuspecting victims? They've agreed to try and isolate this person. State health officials will meet with him and try to convince him to stop his sexual activity and agree to being isolated for treatment. The city's law department is also reviewing the situation to try and draft some legislation to deal with this ever-increasing problem in the city of Cleveland.
The reaction of the gay community when, Fabian's story hit the press was one of anger. How could someone like that, who was ill and going out, how could anyone infect other people? And I think one step further, their anger was turning into, we need to find this guy and get him off the street.
After George Forbes' meeting, Buck Harris was given the job of finding Fabian. Harris works for the State Department of Health and is a leader of Cleveland's gay community.
Concerns were, we can't allow this disease to be spread. I had bar owners and managers of bars who called me that night or whom I ran into over the weekend and said, what does he look like? Has he been in our bar? You have a right to tell us. And if he's in here, well, I think quite honestly it would have been sort of a lynch mob mentality. I don't think Fabian would have walked out of that bar with his sexual organs intact.
Buck Harris never found Fabian. What none of us knew was that Fabian had taken his money and left town. Fabian had disappeared, but what had happened to him was becoming widely known. Time magazine wrote about Fabian, calling him a pitiful nomad. The article also said he was headed back to Houston. Three weeks later, in late September, we received a call. It was Fabian. When we met him in Houston, Fabian told us he'd been hanging out in bars and living in bathhouses.
When I got here, knowing me, I just let everything go. Making all my rounds and seeing who I haven't seen, going where I haven't gone, and doing what I haven't did.
When he could no longer afford the bathhouses, Fabian began living on the streets and sleeping in empty buildings, where, he said, he brought people for sex. Fabian told us he was broke again. He'd spent his Social Security money trying to pay off an old debt and had squandered the rest. He took us to an abandoned house where he'd left some clothes.
Ooh, it's just a mouse.
Because Fabian didn't know where he was going to sleep, we gave him $15 a night for 3 nights to buy a cheap hotel room. We gave him the money on the condition that he not practice unsafe sex and that he stay away from the bathhouses. Fabian also told us he was planning to see his doctor.
Well, Fabian, how are you? Welcome back to Houston.
Yeah.
You've been traveling all over the country.
Yeah.
Have a seat.
Making time, magazine.
How have you been feeling?
Fine.
Have you really? Not having any trouble with shortness of breath?
No.
Okay. Have you noticed any blue bumps or brown bumps on your skin anywhere?
No. Just insect bites and stuff like that.
Let me be sure those are insect bites.
I have one on my leg, right? Sort of purple.
Okay, but none of these are capuchins. Yeah, one of the things AIDS patients get is a skin tumor called capuchins, but you don't have that. That's not important. Where are you staying now?
Here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, that's one of the problems. That's why you made Time magazine. You have got to find a place to stay and settle there. You know, you can't be freaking out public health departments all over the whole United States. Let me just look in your mouth a second. Okay, that looks good. Okay, well, I don't feel any lymph glands anywhere.
I remember I used to couldn't run because it drains me, but now I can run.
So you're in remission now. Well, that's good.
What is that?
Well, remission means that your disease is under control.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's cured,
Yeah.
but it means it's under control for right now. It's not bothering you. But you do understand you have AIDS, right?
Mhm.
And you know how you can transmit AIDS.
Yeah.
Through sexual contact and through blood.
Yeah.
That's the only 2 ways you can transmit it. Now, one thing that bothers me is that Time article said that you were
peddling sex.
Quote unquote peddling sex. Is that true, Fabian?
Sort of, yeah.
See, you can't do that. No, that's not funny. You've got a disease that is almost always fatal, and you're giving it to people all over the country. Now that just isn't using common sense.
I'm not, when I masturbate or ejaculate, it's not getting in them or on them.
You're sure of that?
Mm-hmm. I'm making sure of that.
Well,
and I'm not kissing no one. That's another way to get it.
So you're not exchanging body fluids. You know what
No.
safe sex means. Okay. Well, just the same, I talked to Dr. Houghton, Fabian. He's the county public health director here.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you stay in Houston, he's going to send you a letter, which we'll deliver on Monday, saying that you have to restrain from sexual activities, and particularly from prostitution. If you do that in Houston, then you can be put under protective custody. And we just can't take the chance, Fabian. Now, if you behave yourself, and we want to take care of you. If you get sick, we'll be glad to see you anytime. But if you go out and start being a male prostitute, then we're going to have to call the constables and have you locked up. We just can't do that because we're not talking about.
I don't want to be locked up.
We're not talking about clap. Something you can cure with penicillin. We're talking about a disease you can't cure, and therefore it's your obligation not to spread it to other people. You just can't do that.
I've slowed down quite a bit, though.
Yeah, well, it's more than slow down. You got to stop it.
But Fabian ignored Dr. Oz and our warnings. We discovered he didn't use our money for hotel rooms, and he admitted he was still having unsafe sex.
It's just, you just can't be spreading a disease that's going to kill people.
He remains infectious until we find a cure, or the people who are doing the research find a cure, or until he dies.
After talking to Fabian's doctor, Houston Public Health Director James Houghton and his staff weighed their options.
Where we detain him becomes a more critical question, because from what Dr. Aw told us, his diagnosis was only made in July, and so there's a good possibility that this could go on for 2 years. And furthermore, this person is in remission now.
So that means
he's not demonstrating, he looks fine. Okay. He's not demonstrating any signs of illness.
That was my bed right there. I had a nice view. I raised all kind of hell in here. I wanted... Ooh, he's in terrible shape.
Yeah.
Some of these people scare me. It's hard for me to sit here and realize that I have it. I'm not fooling myself. I just... For a disease to be so dreaded, it's like something's missing. You know, those patients we saw the other day in Jeff Davis, and that's what I expect, to be laying there, short of breath and about ready to go. That's what I expect out of that disease, and something so dreaded.
But if you know how dreadful the disease is, and you saw those people in Jeff Davis, if you know how dreadful the disease is, how could you go ahead and take a chance that you might give it to somebody?
I don't know. I guess I'm to the point where I just don't give a damn, and, you know. I really don't.
You have to make the determination on medical grounds whether or not having sex with someone who has a documented case of AIDS presents any greater public health risk. Then you may as well go ahead. If it doesn't present any greater public health risk, you may as well leave something in like that.
Dr. Houghton's solution was to deliver a carefully worded letter to Fabian, which essentially ordered him not to have
change
sex.
It that way, but I think that one's going to cause more trouble than we'll be able to handle.
What does that letter say, essentially?
Read it.
What's your understanding of it?
Stop having sex with me. The world.
Is that going to be easy for you?
Very hard. But I'm going to try.
It was explained to me that Dr. Houghton's letter is written in such a manner where he cannot exchange any fluids with anybody. He cannot give blood. That's a violation.
Dr. Houghton turned over the job of enforcing the letter to the Houston Vice Squad. It was the first time in his career he had called the police in on a health problem.
I talked to him about whether we could go out and make a prostitution case or engage in sex with him, an offer to engage in sex with him, and they told me that their appellate division is going to look into it, but it appears like that we have to either catch him in the actual act of engaging in a sex act, or you know, do it ourselves, and which obviously we're not going to do. You know, not me. Either. So we're kind of caught between a catch-22 deal here. Is we, you know, if we can't make the case, then we're kind of out of this deal.
Dr. Reeve, my name is Captain Fulbright, Jack Fulbright, in charge of the Vice Division here in Houston. I need to talk to you about a problem that we've got. I'm finding it hard to believe that the health department does not have any power of arrest. Maybe the city health department doesn't have any power of arrest, but maybe people that work for the state do. Yeah. I know Paul Bibler real well. And, okay, thank you very much. I've gotten total all the way back around to Paul Bibler.
I went that same circle.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. I've talked to Reeve and Bibler. And,
what'd they say?
Well, I don't know. Reeve said to talk to Bibler.
And Bibler will tell you to talk to Bush. And
talk to who?
Ted Bush, over in the DA's office.
Well, hell, they don't know anything.
But apparently this is what you're talking about. They've already notified him.
They've already notified him.
So they consider they've done their job?
Well, That's what I'm assuming, that
they want us to on-view him having sex with somebody.
On-view him having sex with somebody.
No way.
Well, if you locate him and you watch him start doing things with people, you know, you're going to have to, you know, in good conscience, you're going to have to stop him from going off with somebody, and you have no grounds to do that.
Well, you go looking for him, and you see him, and he gets picked up by that guy, and they take off. You know damn good and well what they're fixing to do.
And I'm not, you know.
So what are you gonna do?
You've opened yourself up to just one hell of some litigation by
The guy just
somebody.
getting in a car with somebody, he ain't violating the law.
You know, maybe legally you haven't done anything wrong, but morally you got that obligation, and this department's going to get burnt real big
Just
for
think how many people cruise around the bus station. They're gonna go, I remember that guy, and they let me do that. Buddy, if you don't think your butt's not in a frying pan, you're wrong.
We can get out there, the four of us can get out there, and hopefully he'll hit on one of us. Yeah, he may hit on one of us. He may not. You know, he may not. We can get him to hit on one of us, go ahead and make our regular old prostitution case, put him on ice for a little bit. Got out of the car yet?
He's stopping right now and letting me out.
Okay, we're down here by the fire.
Okay, I'm at Main and Franklin. I'm gonna get out and check that one black gay bar before I hit the show.
After 2 days of surveillance, the Vice Squad's attempts to arrest Fabian on a soliciting charge failed. Frustrated, the police began looking for other solutions. They called an old political adversary, gay activist Ray Hill.
Because my name was the only one that they thought of, and they called me, and then, of course, I immediately, like virtually everybody else in this story, said, this is not my problem, let's give it to somebody else. I called KSH Foundation and gave them the rundown while I was still waiting for directions to get one of them to go get him instead of me, because I really ought not to be messing in those people's business. They're the professionals. But the person I talked to wasn't really interested in doing anything, and I figured that by the time he decided to do something, I didn't have that much time to wait. So I decided to go ahead and take the responsibility on myself.
What did the person at the AIDS Foundation say to you?
We don't want to get involved. There's too much media on this already.
And what was your reaction to that?
Screw you. I'll find some help somewhere.
The disease that killed that famous actor is the same one afflicting a transient who now has got Houston health officials very concerned this afternoon. The man reportedly is a prostitute who may still be engaging in sex with strangers.
When police tipped off the local media to what was happening, Fabian became headline news.
There are some late developments in this case just this afternoon. Jamie O'Rourke live right now from the Montrose area. Jamie, what's happening?
Right, Shara and Bob, it looks like police have changed their tactics just a little bit right now. That fellow that we're talking about is Fabian Bridges. He's 30 years old, and presently he's right across the street at Charlie's Coffee Shop. We're in the Montrose area. He's at Charlie's Coffee Shop talking to gay political activist Ray Hill, counseling with him right now. Channel 13 Eyewitness News has the only pictures of Fabian Bridges, and we should look at those now. Those were taken just a short while ago as Ray Hill succeeded in contacting Fabian Bridges and got him to get into Hill's car, and they drove over here to Charlie's Coffee Shop where Hill is now counseling with Bridges.
Health department essentially had dumped onto the Vice Squad their problem because they didn't know what to do. And the whole thing was a circus of people trying to find solution to a problem they didn't understand in an environment in which they could not possibly have solved the problem. So all the official efforts were farces and failures.
It would never have occurred to me to turn to the gay community for help in resolving this problem. They came forward and offered to take him under control and to keep him off the streets and to befriend him and to provide for him. That was a resource that would not have occurred to me to look to.
This was 30-year-old Fabian Bridges as he voluntarily checked himself into the psychiatric ward of Ben Taub Hospital yesterday.
As media attention intensified, authorities gave Fabian a choice: check into a hospital for psychiatric evaluation or be jailed on a loitering charge.
Enforcement and health officials were constantly tailing the sick man.
Fabian chose the hospital, but 2 days later, he demanded to be released.
The man police say is a prostitute suspected of spreading AIDS is reportedly back on the streets again tonight.
Around 5 this afternoon, a Houston Vice officer announced that Fabian Bridges, an alleged male prostitute with AIDS, had been released from Ben Taub's mental ward. Bridges has been released to the custody of gay activist Ray Hill, but Dr. James Houghton of the Health Department has requested continued police surveillance of Bridges.
We're going to be monitoring his progress.
Why are you going to be monitoring?
Just more or less for the safety and health and some of the citizens of Houston.
Hill says Bridges will be seeing a psychiatrist and staying with friends in the gay community.
The AIDS Foundation finally came through for Fabian. A lawyer on its board of directors took him into his home. We lost touch with Fabian after that. The gay community was protecting him from the local press and from us. But his story would continue to have an effect on events to come.
No street person in Houston has made an impact on our city like Fabian Bridges, and it's one that's going to be felt from City Hall to Austin for a long time.
This case does open up a brand new set of ethical questions for society to answer.
It prompted City Health Director Dr. James Houghton to propose a national first, a plan to quarantine all AIDS patients like Fabian who won't stop having sex.
Fabian was safe now, living in the home of a friend, away from the controversy surrounding him. We remembered something he'd said to us earlier in Cleveland.
Let me go down in history as being, I am somebody, you know, somebody that'll be respected, somebody who's appreciated, and somebody who can be related to. It's a whole lot of people just go. They're not even on the map. They just go.
But the inevitable happened. Fabian's AIDS symptoms returned. Just 1 week after he moved into his new home, Fabian went back to the hospital. This time, he stayed just over a month.
After Fabian was transferred up to the intensive care unit, we got him fairly well stabilized. His blood pressure came up a little bit, and we thought he might respond to the medication that we had him on for his blood poisoning. So I went home, and then about 8 o'clock at night, I got a call from the resident that Fabian had started bleeding from his stomach and from his nose, and his blood pressure was falling again. So I came in, and we started another central line on him, which is just a big tube to try to get more medicine and more blood into him. And we pumped in all sorts of the medication to try to stop him from bleeding. But he did not respond to that. He had a convulsion, went into a coma, and then went into shock and died very peacefully, actually. He was not in pain during the last day of his life.
Fabian died on November 17th. His family had no money to bury him, so after a week, he was given a pauper's funeral and buried in the county cemetery.
He was buried here about 2 weeks ago. Now, here's where he lies, right here. But the reason why the gravesite looks like this is due to the fact that we've been having a lot of rain, and it's a fresh grave.